All right, so it's shortly after 7 o'clock on Monday, February 1st, 2021. So I'll call the meeting to order. And is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof from members of council? Okay, seeing none. We have the minutes of our previous meeting, which is January 11th, 2021. So a mover and seconder for approval. Okay, Councillor Clark and Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried. And then moving into correspondence. So our next regular meeting is February, that's a budget meeting. Our next regular meeting is Tuesday, February 16th. But the next time you'll see us live on YouTube is on Wednesday, February 3rd, and then also February 10th for our budget meetings. The first item for correspondence is from the Middlesex County, and it's their application for forestry, and that's at 1179 Egremont Drive. It's just a notice there. The next section, Deputy Mayor Hendricks, you had your hand up.
Yeah, just a comment that the exemption doesn't mean that the landowner doesn't have to replant trees, so I'm fine with it.
Okay, is there any other comments on that? So just that's a good point, Deputy Mayor Hendricks. So generally, when these applications come forward to the County Forestry Office, if they are looking at, say, reshaping the woodlot or whatever it is, then they'd be mandated to then replant the same amount of trees somewhere else on either that property or another property that they have, or those funds would go into a tree bank, like a tree fund, to go towards future plantings. But on this application, looks like they're going to be filling in some of the holes that are in that woodlot. Alrighty, so let's move on to the recommended readings. So the first one there, which is correspondence number 2, is from St. Clair Region Conservation Authority, and we have a number from them. So it's their 2021 approved budget, their conservation update for January this year, the December and November meeting highlights for 2020. And then we have the item number 3 is from the Sauble Bay Field Conservation Authority, and it's their Board of Directors special meeting agenda for January 27th. Item number 4 is from Blue Water Recycling, and it's their Board of Directors highlights for January 21st. Item number 5 is from the Municipality of Strathroy-Caradoc, and it's a notice of study commencement for their official plan update. Item number 6 is from MNRF, and it's a proposed regulation for compressed air energy storage in reservoirs. Item number 7 is from MMAH, and it's the Modernization Program Intake 2. Okay, if we go into the action required, item number 8 is from MP Peter Julian, and it's a resolution regarding Bill C-213 Canada Pharmacare Act. Is there any thoughts on supporting that, or Councillor McKinnon?
I just wondered if we had received a copy of this prior. I didn't recall it, but my memory is such that I may not have recalled it. But he said that he sent it to us in November, and I don't recall it being sent to us.
Morgan, I'm just for everybody that's live on YouTube watching us, our clerk Jennifer Turk is with us. You just don't see her in a square because your video is off because her internet is unstable at the moment. So hopefully she's wanting to say something, she can say it. As far as I know, we haven't received that before, and I even went back through my emails because it looks like it was sent to the general email address for Mayor at Adelaide Metcalfe.
Okay. I'm not concerned about it. I just didn't recall it. So thank you.
Deputy Mayor Hendricks and then Councillor Clark.
Yeah. Whether it's a good thing or not, it's not really township business. I had a motion to file.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Clark.
I echo those sentiments.
Okay, so we'll deal with that when we get to the bottom there for filing those. The next one is item number 9. It's from Southwest Oxford. It's a resolution for support of the automatic speed enforcement photo radar. Councillor Brody.
I would say file that one.
Okay. I don't see anybody else jumping up and down to go the opposite way, so we'll keep on moving on. To item number 10, it's a resolution for the interim cap on gas plants and greenhouse gas pollutions. I
was for support.
Okay, so Councillor McKinnon's wanting to support that one. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Brody?
I'd say file it.
Oh, okay. Do we have a seconder to support, or do we have Councillor McKinnon alone there?
Yeah, I didn't really feel strongly one way or the other. And again, I'm not sure it's a noble cause, but I'm not sure it's our business in our township.
Okay, it looks like that one will be likely filed.
It's not a problem.
Alrighty. Next one is item number 11 from West Gray. It's a resolution for Schedule A to Bill 229, Protect, Support, and Recover from COVID-19 Act. Yep, Councillor Brody.
File.
Alrighty.
Keep filing for a while here.
Okay, we'll keep on going to the next one. Item number 12 is from Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry. It's resolution regarding small businesses to reopen.
I support that. I would make a motion to support that.
Okay, do you have a seconder for that? So it's moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hendricks. Morgan, you're going to note that Jen dropped off the call, so if you could, excellent. Is there any discussion on this one? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, the next one is from the Middlesex London Health Unit, and it's the request for the 2021 mosquito larviciding. This is an annual program that we.
London.
Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
Yeah, I think it's something we should support. So if they need our support to get that done or permission to do it in our township areas, I'm good with that.
Okay, seconder. Okay, Councillor Brody. It looks like everybody's in support, so all those in favor. And that's carried. And then the last one there is the resolution regarding the Ontario Fire College. Councillor McKinnon.
I was for support.
Okay, is there a seconder for that one? Okay, Councillor Clark. Is there any discussion at all? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if our fire chief has any thoughts on this issue at all.
Yep. Fire Chief Nordoff.
Yeah, I haven't, to be honest, I haven't read this resolution, but as fire chiefs, we are very disappointed that the fire college is closing.
Okay, is there any other comments at all? All those in favor of support? And that's carried. So if I go back and figure out which ones we supported or not, we need a resolution that council receive and file correspondence item CC1 to Morgan. We'll figure that one out afterwards. But all the ones that we did not support, we're going to file. Mover and seconder. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Clark. All those in favor? And carried. Okay, looks like our clerk is back with us. Hopefully the internet is stable for you, but if not, Morgan has been making notes of the movers and seconders, so.
That's okay. I got the video. I can always go back to it.
Very true. All right. So moving on, so we have our staff reports, and our first one is from our fire chief, Chief Nordoff.
Okay, thank you. So this is an annual report that I provide for council, and it provides activities of the fire department for the previous year, being 2020, including calls by types, firefighter training, fire prevention activities, and public ed. So like everybody else, 2020 was a year like no other for the fire department, mainly due to COVID-19. Call volume was down due to less traffic on the roadways and the public being more careful. Firefighter training needed to be suspended for some time due to new protocols put in place during the lockdown periods. And some public ed activities couldn't happen also due to the pandemic. Number of fire inspections were down as well for the same reason, and also because until now we didn't have a certified inspector. So myself, with the help of staff from the Office of the Fire Marshal and our CBO, did perform some inspections due to requests or complaints. So all expenses for callouts, training, and public ed are covered in the department's operational budget. And some expenses for motor vehicle collisions are recouped by invoicing the MTO and or insurance companies. And then I recommend that council receive the fire department 2020 activity report as prepared by the fire chief. So attached to this report is a couple other reports or activities. And the first one being just a breakdown on some of the things that we did do. And all of these numbers are low due to the pandemic, as I mentioned. So total hours spent on training nights, which is in-house training per firefighter, is 32 hours. Normally that would be at least 48 hours. And then total hours spent on truck checks per firefighter is 20 hours, and that's a little bit low as well. 2 firefighters completed their NFPA Fire Instructor Level 1 course at 20 hours each. And 1 firefighter completed Designated Officer course, which was a 1-day, 8-hour course. And then fire inspections, we did 2 routine inspections, 2 complaint, and 3 request. Also very low. And then same with public education. The 72-hour emergency preparedness presentations I normally do at the school was done by the teachers this year. I provided them the PowerPoint presentation for it, and they did it themselves. And then there's quite a number of social media posts on Facebook, and then newspaper articles. And I'm gonna pull up the other one here. So this is the calls by types. Actually, I got a better one here. For the year. So these are the call outs. I'll get it up here in a second. So there, and the call volume was down too. The highest we've ever been, if I recall, was 94 per year, and last year was just 60. And then you have the breakdown of the calls in front of you there. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Chief. Is there any questions at all from members of council? Councillor Clark?
Yeah, back to, it's not specifically a report, but earlier on about us standing up against the closure of the fire school or academy or whatever. What's the plan going forward as a fire chief for providing training for these guys?
Well, we do our in-house training, and then there are regional training centers. The closest one being Grimsby for us. However, we don't really use the fire college physically. We use their curriculum, and we don't use the regional training centers. Now, there are some other, I would call them private training centers that we do use. And we've had a number of our firefighters taking courses there and through that getting certified to NFPA standards. And then there's also local ones, which we've done, like countywide, and working with people from other counties. So instructors there put training together, and then they get certified through IFSAC and Pro Board through the Office of the Fire Marshal and to their NFPA standards. So in the past, we did do training through the college, and it was cheap. It was $65, whether you attended it or registered through the college. Now, using local training centers, the average cost could be $1,000 per firefighter. Where this is all going to go, we're not sure yet. There's a couple of meetings this week with fire chiefs and with the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, because the province has sort of promised that they are going to help us either financially or continue on with online learning curriculum, but nothing has been written yet. So we're not sure where we're at.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Is there any other questions at all for the chief? Okay, seeing none. I will just echo your comments, Chief Nordoff. I did go back and look at the 2019 report that you presented to us last January, just to see how those numbers compare, and it's unbelievable how low the numbers are this year. So it just shows that there wasn't as many incidents, obviously, due to people either staying at home and not being in their motor vehicle and collisions, and I think less fire calls as well. So there's a big difference between 2020 and the previous years.
For sure. And we've started this year out the same. We only had 3 calls in January. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So if there's no other questions at all, we need a motion from council to resolve that council receive the Adelaide Metcalfe Fire Department 2020 Annual Activity Report as presented by the Fire Chief. Okay, Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried. All right, so our next report is from our Public Works Manager, Coulter.
Thank you, Mayor Smith. Tonight my report's on the recent changes to the off-road vehicles on many Ontario roads that came into effect as of January 1st, 2021. These changes effectively allow for the operation of off-road vehicles on all local highways under the jurisdiction of all the local Middlesex County municipalities, unless otherwise prohibited. Municipalities listed in Ontario Regulation 803 permitted off-road vehicles will be allowed by default on municipal highways unless the municipality has an existing bylaw that restricts their use or creates a new bylaw to prohibit or restrict the use of some or all of off-road vehicles. In order to support municipalities with these changes, the ministry has provided a municipal guidance document, which is attached to help municipalities decide whether they need to take action to revoke, update, or pass new bylaws related to on-road access by off-road vehicles on the highways under their jurisdiction. This new regulation is somewhat confusing, and this is a good opportunity to remind the public on the rules around the safe operation of these vehicles. Vehicles being utilized for agricultural purposes or for emergency response, they are exempt from all these regulations. Middlesex County recently approved a bylaw in order to clarify the prohibition of these vehicles on county highways. A copy of the Middlesex County bylaw, along with the background information provided by the province, are attached. There are no financial impacts at this time. The recommendation is being resolved that council accept the off-road vehicle regulation changes report prepared by the Public Works Manager, and resolve that council consider adopting a similar bylaw as Middlesex County to regulate the usage of these vehicles on township roads.
Thank you, Coulter. Is there any questions or comments at all from members of council? Councillor Brody.
So I want to get this straight. The government basically said off-road vehicles can be permitted on county roads, correct?
Correct.
So then why would the government in turn it to counties and local municipalities to change the rule when they basically said that these vehicles are allowed? They're insured, they're licensed. We're getting into putting more rules on top of rules here. I don't like this one at all. I don't think we need it in a very small rural municipality. So this is basically saying that agriculture is exempt, which I get, but what if you, Coulter Cahill, was a hunter and not a farmer, and you want to take your four-wheeler down the side road to go hunting come fall? Then you can't. So I don't like this bylaw at all. I don't think we have to follow everything the county does. And if the county is regulating the county highways, I mean, I guess that's a little different than what we have to do on our township back roads. I know I have an ATV and I'm a farmer, but it will be going down the county road because I live on one.
Alrighty.
No, I can comment on that, Mike. Yeah, I agree, and I don't know exactly where I stand on this. I just bringing the information to council for them to make a decision whether they want to or not. That's up to council.
Yep. Just using your name as an example, Coulter.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor McKinnon.
Just to bring another different angle to this, in the township of Mosa, before it amalgamated with Southwest Middlesex, there were problems with the all-terrain vehicles going down in through the ditches and causing a lot of damage to the municipal ditches, which that ground is quite light soiled. And then they would come back to the municipality when they ran into a culvert that was on that drain and try to get the municipality to be liable for the repairs to their all-terrain. So I can see the other point to this. So just my comments.
All right, Councillor Clark.
Yeah, this is to Coulter. Are you having any issues right now with ATVs or other off-road vehicles ripping roads up or anything like that? Or I guess because the way I look at this is I could see why in a municipality like Strathmore, Caradoc, or Middlesex, like Thames, where you've got Thorndale, where you've got heavily populated areas where you wouldn't want these vehicles ripping around. But we are so rural that I don't see a point in putting restrictions on them at this time, unless, like I said, they're ripping roads up and making a mess.
Thank you, Sue. we don't have a lot of issues, mostly in the summertime. You know, there's the odd time, but again, I don't know if putting a bylaw in place will change that or not. You know, lots of municipalities are kind of on the fence with this one. I think if you have a larger town in your township, it will force you to put a bylaw in place. But again, this is for council's consideration. My opinion. I see both sides, so just looking for your opinion.
Yeah, I think for now we're probably fine leaving it status quo, but that's just opinion.
Deputy Hendricks?
Yeah, I think if you've got those vehicles traveling down the road, the only reason they go in the ditches is because they weren't allowed on the road. If they're allowed on the road, they'll stay out of the ditches and you know, because the ditches are hazardous. They can have rollovers.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you differentiate. How are you going to tell if somebody's a farmer or a hunter or a recreational trespasser? Until you stop them, you don't know.
Okay. Councilor Brody?
Yeah, I just want to make like Deputy Mayor Hendricks's and Betty Ann's point, like the ditches are dangerous. That's where you get long grass. You don't know if there's an old culvert in there. Most snowmobile accidents, the trail or the road is the safest. You get running down through ditches and it's dangerous, very dangerous. And you're going to get more people getting hurt trying to do that if there's a bylaw that they have to stay off the road than just running along with the road.
Okay. Morgan, you have additional comments?
Yeah, just to add to the conversation, I know this is a tough question, whether to prohibit off-road vehicles on local roads. Talking to a number of my colleagues across Ontario, they're also struggling with this one as well. And one of the comments that I seem to get back from most is that they don't really appreciate that the municipalities have been provided this opportunity to make this decision whether to prohibit off-road vehicles on local roads. We've been operating within that decision or that prohibition for a long time, even beyond what bylaws we have locally. A number of engineers or road superintendents who I've spoken with have cited very much to what Councillor McKinnon's point was, that it does do some destruction of ditches and provides opportunity for some challenges along the side of the roads. But really what it comes down to, I think, is the liability of the conversation. So if we were to implement a bylaw like this, we're looking at a reduced legal risk. We're still going to get sued regardless of what happens on the roadway, because it is a municipal piece of property. So that's not going to challenge us. It's not going to defer or prevent lawsuits. But what it does say is that the municipality has said that they're not to be allowed on roadways, and then that would defer that liability to an extent. Not that we won't still be named in a lawsuit, but a death in Ontario is worth about $10 million. And that's the risk that we would be looking at if we didn't implement a bylaw like this. So I just want to give you the legal opinion and the engineering opinion that I've heard outside of this conversation. But again, it seems to be a bit of a mixed bag. If they're primarily an urban area, they seem to be adopting these bylaws. If they're primarily a rural municipality, they don't seem to be adopting these types of bylaws. So I just wanted to throw that information out there for council's consideration, because the legal analysis is not what I haven't heard that yet. So I just wanted to park that.
Okay. If I could just ask a couple of questions. So prior to the regulations changing, the off-road vehicles were not permitted on local or county roads. Is that correct? They were not permitted?
So the county has clarified the prohibition on county highways.
Yeah, but prior to the change in the provincial government, four-wheelers and off-road vehicles were not permitted.
Prior to January 2021, these vehicles were not permitted on highways under the Traffic Safety Act.
Okay. And then, so and the reason I asked that question is because I think we all know of a number of non-agricultural users that likely have four-wheelers or off-road vehicles that have always moved down roadways, and I don't think they ever stopped. There was no issue before. So my point is that if this bylaw is in, if the bylaw was approved or not, at the end of the day, nothing has really changed other than we have, covered the legal point of view from the municipality if we wanted to do that. Because those four-wheelers or ATVs or whatever it would be, prior to January 1st, they weren't legally allowed to be on the roadway anyways. It's just a matter of now whether or not they would be permitted or not. So that's just one comment that I have. The other question that I'm not sure about, and I probably should have done some more reading into how it works, but say there is a four-wheeler, how does it work with like a secondary, like an additional person, like a passenger on that vehicle? Are they permitted? And if they are, how does it work for like helmets? How old can they be? That's just another concern that I have, is just with the ages that are, of these individuals that would be on our roads with the potential hazards that could be in the future. Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
Yeah, I do know that the legal age to operate a motorized vehicle is 16. So for some farm kids being asked to go do work on another farm, they can't take the farm truck, but they can take the four-wheeler to go do chores or something like that. So it's been, I mean, agriculture is exempted, but I do know that I had somebody in my neighborhood got stopped a couple of weeks ago because they weren't wearing a helmet going from farm to farm, and they were on the road long enough for a police car to stop them. So the police are enforcing the safety rules around them. I don't think we should be making lawbreakers of people who are just continuing to do their business.
Okay. As I said before, really, for the last number of years, people have been driving up and down the roads with four-wheelers, and it wasn't permitted then. So nothing's going to change in my opinion. So whether we have the bylaw or not, it's just a matter of if it's going to be legal or not. So whatever, I'm assuming I know what way we're planning on going. So Councillor Brody.
I think I just want to enumerate that the government has made this legal. So why are we going to change it?
Okay. So if there's no other additional comments, so the first one is we're going to receive the report. Okay, Councillor Clark and Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? This is just to receive the report, and that's carried. And the second recommendation there is to consider adopting a similar bylaw. From the sounds of our discussion of council, that doesn't seem to be what we'd like to do. So Jen, would you like to still see a motion of some sort, or just leave it as is?
I think we should have a motion of some sort just to show that a discussion has taken place, whether it be that council is not choosing to opt for a bylaw to implement and regulate ORVs at this time, unless we get infractions. We hear about infractions through the Highway Traffic Act, which will show up through the provincial offenses revenue that we receive.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
Yeah, I'll move that we table a decision to enact an off-road vehicle bylaw. I guess I'm tabling it so it doesn't have to be deferred to I don't have to mention a time. I'm not deferring it, I'm tabling it.
Okay. Do you have a seconder for that?
Can I just clarify what she's basically stating that we do not want a bylaw restricting
Not at this
HT.
time.
Not at this
Yeah.
time.
I'll second that.
Sure. Councilor Brody? Okay, is there any further discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. So before we move on with this one, I think the one thing that we do still need to do is just do some kind of social media information about this change from the provincial government, and just reinstate some of those safety factors that we have to do that Deputy Mayor Hendricks was mentioning, you know, helmets and whatever else. I'm not even sure what all the list is. I'm assuming if it's, you know, after a certain point, lights on the vehicles and all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure, but I think we need to get that information out so everybody is following by rules.
Yeah, Curtis, I think there was also something in the proposed one about the 80 kilometers an hour. I don't even know if a four-wheeler goes 80 kilometers, but anyway.
It does.
Some do.
I have no idea. I've never owned one, so I couldn't help you out on that. Councilor McKinnon.
Also, it would likely be a good idea to post the county's bylaw so that our residents are aware that they cannot be on the road with their all-terrain vehicles on county roads.
Which I'm assuming will limit the distance that a lot of people will go, because the county road's going to dissect Adelaide Metcalfe quite well in some spots.
But I thought I interpreted it that it was up to us if we wanted to restrict on the county roads in the document that Coulter provided.
No, I think it was up to us for local. I understood, but I could be wrong, Sue.
Yeah, this is a county bylaw for the
Yeah.
county roads.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not adopting it, so we're fine. Okay.
Yeah, people are allowed to cross them perpendicularly.
Yes.
But they're not permitted on the actual county road. This
Yeah.
discusses our municipal roads.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilor Brody?
Like I said, I live on a county road. Now I'm exempt from agriculture, but if I wasn't, it's still going to go down the county road to get where I have to go. Bylaw or no bylaw.
That's great that you're saying that live on YouTube for all to hear.
You betcha. I will stand by my vision.
All right. So let's move on to our next staff report. It's from our clerk, Jennifer.
Thanks, Mayor Smith. My first report tonight is regarding municipal freedom of information requests that we've received throughout the year. The Municipal Information Protection and Privacy Act, the township is required to report access to information statistics annually. And that information goes to the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario. This report provides a summary of the 2020 access request statistics that will be reported to the IPC. MFIPA is an access to information and protection and privacy law that applies to all municipal institutions, including local boards and commissions. Under MFIPA's access provisions, members of the public are given the right to submit written requests to the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe to examine or receive copies of records in the township's custody and control. The right of access, referred to as FOI, impacts general records in every program's record holdings. In addition, requests may be submitted by individuals for access to their own personal records under MFIPA's privacy provisions. The clerk's department has delegated authority for processing requests made under MFIPA. There's a 30-day time limit for processing formal MFIPA requests unless a third-party notice or notice of extension is issued. Fees are levied. There's a $5 application fee that must be paid by the requester when they submit a request. And when the township denies an access request, either partially or fully, an exemption or exclusion must be claimed. An exemption is a specific category of information that must or may be withheld from disclosure depending on the circumstances. And an exclusion, a category of information that is not subject to MFIPA at all. Statistics relating to access requests, such as the number of requests processed in the calendar year, fees collected and waived, exemptions and exclusions claimed, etc., must be submitted annually to the IPC. Although the clerk's department is responsible for MFIPA compliance, Township Council is technically considered the head for MFIPA. Therefore, the following information is being presented for Council's knowledge. So if you look there, there's a chart that I've put together. Total number of requests processed for 2020 is 4. 2 were personal information, 2 were general information. 3 of them were within 30 days. 1 is over 30 days due to notice of extension. 1 is over 30 days due to notice to affected party. Application fees is $20 that's been collected, and processing fees, which is the administration fees as per our bylaw, $566 that's been collected. Under MFIPA, individuals are also given a formal right to request a correction of their personal information. In 2020, 0 correction requests were received. In 2021, the Clerk's Department will work on the following areas for the FOI program: staff education and training. Staff education and training on freedom of information and privacy is an ongoing goal for the FOI request. In 2021, training opportunities to provide FOI and privacy training will be sought for administration staff. Corporate policies. The Clerk's Department is working towards an FOI program where corporate policies relating to privacy and records management that will be approved and implemented in 2021. These policies will assist staff in better responding to privacy breaches and understanding their obligations for records management. And then with electronic records management, the Clerk's Department has implemented the Laserfiche program, which is an electronic web-based program following TOMRIMS, which is the Ontario Municipal Records Management System. Council passed a bylaw last year, Bylaw 71, which is for the records retention program that includes Laserfiche. At this moment, there's no financial implications, as that's just revenue that's generated through the administration budget. And this is just an FOI for council. There's no decisions needed.
Alrighty, is there any questions at all? It's a pretty straightforward report. Okay, we need a mover and seconder to receive that report. Councillor Brody and Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Okay. My second report is council remuneration for 2020. Again, this is a public document. So before I make it public, it then comes to council for reviewing. The Municipal Act states in section 284 that the treasurer of a municipality shall in each year on or before March 31st provide to the council of the municipality an itemized statement of remuneration expenses paid in the previous year. So the attached is a spreadsheet that's been created that outlines all of the expenses that have been made on behalf of council or for to council. Expenses and remuneration for council was approved in the 2020 budget totaling $71,955, and the actual expenses and remuneration for 2020 was $58,508.53, and that's due in part because the conferences and conventions became virtual, which then there wasn't mileage and the fees for those were reduced. And again, there's no decision made on it, it's just for FYI purposes for council.
Okay, is there any questions at all from members of council? Okay, Councillor Brody.
So I've been thinking about this since I got on council. So nothing about our remuneration, and I'm gonna make this short because we can bring it up another time. And no offense to Deputy Mayor Hendricks here at all. I just wonder why some townships don't have a specific where you have to run for a deputy mayor position. Election's going to come up in a year and a half. I know other municipalities, they just have the top 4 councillors, the municipality votes, or the ratepayers vote for your 4, and then the top person basically just comes the deputy mayor, or if the top person didn't want to, the next one does. My thought on this is just if you get 2 councillors that are, you know, very good and they run for one spot and one gets bumped, I just don't see why we need to have like an election for a mayor and one for a deputy mayor. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there now since this come up. Like, we can put this off for a while, but I just think it needs to be looked at before the next election. And maybe my thoughts are wrong, but I just don't like the idea of you may have somebody very good that gets bumped on a deputy mayor position. So that's just my thought I wanted to throw out there.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent point, Councillor Brody. So that's a point that I actually brought up about 4 years ago. And I'm positive that Jen is probably already coming up with a report for all the possibilities to look at before the next municipal election.
Okay.
Jen shaking her head yes, and probably a list of things for us to go through. So Jen?
Yeah, yeah, thanks, Mayor Smith. So through Mayor Smith to you, Councillor Brody, every year municipal clerks bring back to their council composition report, and it lists the options. So we can go into wards, we can eliminate the election of a deputy mayor and just have it councillors and mayor, and then the top vote of a councillor becomes a deputy mayor. It's however council wishes, but I will be bringing back a report for the composition, and council can decide at that point what they want to do.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Hendricks?
Yeah, I distinctly remember having this conversation 4 years ago and deciding we would go that way, and it just didn't happen for some reason. I think I heard something about it wasn't allowed, but I don't think that that's the case as far as I've heard. But I know that we had this discussion and decided that we thought it was fine to do it exactly the way Mike's talking about.
So 4 years ago, we did bring back a report, or I brought in a report. And at that time, council didn't have an appetite to remove the deputy mayor position, but it wasn't something that they wouldn't consider for the future.
Okay.
But it's always a report that I bring back every election because things change and the flavors of council change and composition changes. So it will be a report that will be coming to council before the next election, like before the ballots get printed with positions.
Alrighty, so we'll look forward to that in the future. So right now the recommendation there to receive the report. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hendricks, second by Councillor Clark. All those in favor? And that's carried.
Sorry, my printer's not working today, so I haven't been able to print off my resolution. So I'm going to the computer and then back to the iPad. So I'm multitasking today. Okay, so my next report is regarding the summer jobs grant. And I think this was brought up briefly at our first budget meeting, which was last Wednesday on the 27th. Canada Summer Jobs is a federal grant to fund jobs for summer students. Service Canada assesses the applications on a constituency by constituency basis, and members of parliament identify local priorities for their constituency. Local priorities take into account labor market needs, including sectors experiencing labor shortages. An application was submitted on Monday, January 25th. The deadline was Friday, January 29th. And in reviewing MP Leanne Rood's priorities, what we're asking for would very much fit into her priorities. So due to the nature of the projects proposed in the Public Works Department for 2021, and in collaboration with Coulter, it was deemed to hire a summer student for the municipal office rather than for Public Works. And this summer student would very much assist in the records retention program because we are a very manual municipality with a lot of paper records. All that stuff has to be scanned and put into the system electronically. So that's going to be a big project between the summer student and myself. And I would be the summer student supervisor. Township records, as I mentioned, they are in paper form and required to be electronically scanned in order to be filed in the Laserfish program. And this includes even the building department and planning applications. So it's quite a project that's going to have to be done. In surveying area municipalities with Laserfish, past hires with a concentration on records retention has been a successful endeavor for these municipalities to switch from paper to electronic filing. And as I mentioned, an application was submitted Monday, January 25th. It's anticipated that the announcement will be received end of February, beginning of March. And staff also reached out to our MP to inform them that the township had submitted an application, because in the 4 years that I've been here, no application has ever been submitted. And in my past experience with Canada Summer Jobs, it's best to reach out to your MP so that they know that your township is vying for a summer student position, because it's not guaranteed that you'll get it. It all depends on how many students in the area that other municipalities are asking for. So they've been in contact and they responded and would just keep us in the loop as to what they hear from upper management. Consultation was with Coulter and the financial impact. So this is for a 16-week period starting May to end of August, and based on a 35-hour work week. The anticipated hourly wage would be the mandated minimum wage of $14.25 per hour. And I only started with that because that's the minimum that we have to pay. If we're able to pay more, great, but I didn't want to stipulate what the pay is because we don't know what our budget's going to be yet. The cost for wages based on that minimum wage is just shy of $8,000 plus WSIB. If we are successful, about 50% of that will be covered by the grant. So then the municipality is only responsible for the other 50%. And we have yet to incorporate that into the 2021 budget. And a motion from council to receive the Canada Summer Job Staff Report as presented by myself.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Is there any questions at all on this report? Councillor Brody?
Yeah, so this looks like a very good idea to me if the government will pay for half of a summer student. But if we went ahead with this anyways and hired a student, which I think we should, because like you said, this is going to be a big project. If we didn't get this grant, can that still come out of that fund we're getting from the government for, I can't remember what it's called, but
Modernization Fund?
Yes, that's what, that one.
Yep, through Mayor Smith to you, Councillor Brody, it can. We're just, that's not where we have it allocated at this point in time, but it certainly can. If we don't get the funds from Canada Summer Jobs, we can certainly move it out of municipal modernization, and we can make it more than 16 weeks.
Because I think, like you said, this is a big project. I think this has to be done. So I just thought if we shouldn't get stuck if we didn't get this funding, we could get it from that other grant.
Yeah, we can discuss that all during the budget process, but I think, yeah, probably all council fully agrees that we need to get someone in there to help with that project. And it only makes sense to have a student in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, is there any other questions or comments at all? Seeing none, we need a mover and seconder to receive that report. Mayor Hendricks and Councillor Clark, all those in favor? And that's carried.
My next report is regarding animal control services. So if council remembers, back in 2018, council approved for a contract renewal with Vicky Kyle for animal control services. So at the January 11th, 2021 council meeting, staff presented a report to council regarding moving forward with that contract. So attached to the staff report is the draft contract that Vicky Kyle is satisfied with. Legal has reviewed it to make sure that I'm not missing anything in it for legality standpoint. And just so council is aware, some of the key elements in the agreement is a 5-year contract beginning in 2021. There'll be door-to-door tagging every 3 years beginning in 2021. There's a 3% annual increase for service fee, and dog tagging commission is 25% of the dog tag sales every 3 years. And Vicky Kyle, she owns Glencoe Animal Shelter, which will be our pound, but Vicky Kyle will be responsible for enforcing and issuing tickets for any and all bylaws pertaining to dogs for the township. We also have our bylaw enforcement officer, so if something happened and Vicky wasn't able to attend, we can also have a bylaw enforcement officer to issue tickets as well. Fees for service have been just over $900 per month plus HST since May 1st of 2018. January 1st, fees are being increased 3% to $928.96 per month. And then door-to-door tagging will commence this year, and 25% of the dog tag sales is part of her commission on top of that. In 2020, the township received $14,000 in dog tag sales, and if the same revenue is expected for 2021, that would be a $3,500 commission for dog tagging that would go to Vicky Kyle. as per the agreement that's been attached there for council's review. For 2024 dog tagging year, fees for the purchase of dog tags should be reviewed to ensure that the sale of dog tags is offsetting the expense of the service, like a cost recovery user pay system. Attached is the draft agreement, and this was in consultation with Vicki Kyle at Glencoe Animal Shelter and David Samuels, who is part of our legal department at the County of Middlesex. Recommendation is to receive my staff report, and the other recommendation is that council approve the agreement for animal control services with Vicki Kyle.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Is there any questions or comments on this report? Councillor Clark?
Yeah, I think for the benefit of the public or anybody that's watching, I think we need to be really clear that this is strictly for dogs. I know it says animal control, but it's a specific animal. And I think that's important to note.
Excellent point. Is there any other questions or comments at all? So we have two recommendations there. So the first one is to receive the report. Okay, Deputy Mayor Hendricks and Councilor McKinnon. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. And the next one is resolve that council approve the agreement with the animal control services with Vicki Kyle, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the bylaw. Okay, Councilor McKinnon and Councilor Brody. All those in favor? And that's carried.
My next report is regarding personal protective equipment. It's an update to the policy that we currently have from 2014. Actually, I guess it's 13 is when that policy was from, October. At the March 4th, 2019 council meeting, council discussed about increasing the boot allowance to reflect costs of living. There was no motion approved by council. However, this was to be reflected in the 2020 budget, which was not. At the March 4th, 2019 council meeting, council did approve to increase the boot allowance from 185 to 250, which has been in practice since. One thing within our PPE policy, we had no stipulation as to the dollar amount for each department could spend on clothing allowance, but we did specify for boot allowance. So for the sake of consistency, in consultation with Coulter and Shannon, we just thought it would be best if there was a dollar amount for the clothing allowance. We haven't had anybody abuse the system, but it's simply just because we've put in a limit on boot allowance, we might as well put a limit on the clothing allowance. So for the building department, it's $450 per staff member per year towards clothing and or boot allowance. And for public works, that's broken out a bit differently because they might require more clothing allowance than maybe what the building department would need. So boot allowance is $250 per person or per staff, and clothing allowance is $450 per staff. And this includes seasonal and landfill personnel as well. So there's two recommendations there. One's to receive the report and the other one's to approve the amendments to the PPE policy from 2013.
Okay, is there any questions or comments at all? Councillor Clark?
What's been the past? What's been the average spend for a clothing allowance, even if we haven't made a provision for it?
Joint building services, I don't know, because 2020 was the first year, and I don't recall any expenses for that. But Coulter, do you know what you've spent in your department?
Yeah, actually, Councillor Clark, in the past, we were told 500 per staff, and it's kind of on an as-need basis. You don't just get to spend $500 willy-nilly every year on clothing. But in talks with Jennifer, we thought of $450 because that's just based on 2 t-shirts, 2 long sleeve, 2 sweaters, 2 pants. And again, that's usually kind of the going rate. Nobody abuses it. It is nice to have something in the policy, so it doesn't happen, but that's what it's based on.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. It's just because we never had this discussion ever before, so that's good.
Councillor Brody?
Question through you to Coulter. I think I'm fine with this because most places now have to buy more high vis stuff. Or is that what most of the guys have? And is there regulations like we have to have the high vis coats and coveralls and everything, correct?
Yes, Councillor Brody, we have to have all that stuff just because we do work at night with snow plowing and whatnot, and obviously on the road. So everything we buy does have high vis. It's got all the tape and everything.
Yeah.
Councillor McKinnon?
I know that we're discussing the public works and the building department, but I also feel that the administration should be included in a clothing staff allowance, because they can ruin their clothes on the photocopying machines. The ink gets on it and can ruin them. So if the building department were getting $200, I'd like to see the administrative staff receive the same.
Before we go back to Councillor Clark, just because I'm seeing that we have the policy, is it an actual policy document, or is it just a bylaw that or a motion that we've had before?
No, there's an actual policy, Mayor Smith, from 2013, but there's no dollar amounts listed in it, not even for the boots, which I thought was odd.
Okay. Councillor Clark?
Yeah, so for the building department, that 450 includes boots, whether they be
Boots and,
boots and construction boots or whatever, if they're going in barns and whatnot. Do you have any? I know it was a different year this year with the joint services and whatever, but were you guys wearing shirts that said Adelaide Metcalfe, or not really, because you'd be going into different municipalities, so it wouldn't be required?
Yep, Shannon?
Councillor Clark. The intent would be that the money would be utilized for branding. So whether it be joint building service on a winter jacket or a spring jacket or golf shirt or something, to be able to identify us when we arrive to a site. That's the intent of the clothing portion. Because again, typically you probably in building, we don't need new boots yearly, but that's why the intent was to give the 450. So one year we could buy a jacket, like a winter jacket, and have it logoed for branding, and then maybe the next year you get boots. Then the following year you can maybe get a spring jacket with the branding, and then a couple golf shirts or something like that. So again, it's just about the branding. We don't have to use it, but it's there to be able to give that ability to utilize it. And again, in my previous history, I would say you're probably looking, by the time you buy a winter jacket and put the logo and branding on it, you're probably close to $300 anyways. So just that's kind of where that dollar figure came from. And again, that's why we grouped it as one. So it could ebb and flow, whether it was boots for over 200 or you were going to utilize the remainder for something else. So.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have a problem with the roads guys or the building department having a budget for that. I can't support the staff having a budget for that in the office, administrative staff. That's just a personal comment.
Yep. Councillor Brody?
Through you to Shannon, for the CBO department, like there'd be certain job sites and stuff that you would have to have protective gear and that kind of stuff. Would you not? Like, is that accounted in this too, or?
Absolutely. We would utilize, I mean, there's, I don't know if the policy specifically says like a hard hat needs to come out of this PPE, but again, it can. But sometimes on a site, like I know in my past when I've been on turbine sites, you know, you are required to wear like high vis. So we would have a vest that we would utilize for that. Goggles, eye protection, depending on where we're going. When we went into one site, the chief and I, they provided us with all the PPE that they wanted us to put on top. But again, that's just dependent on site specific, where they want you to go. Sometimes you got to have booties on. Sometimes it's provided, sometimes it's not, but we would figure that out beforehand, and that would all come from this budget as well.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other questions or comments at all? Councillor Brody?
Yeah, I guess I I mean, I think the office staff to have budget for, I don't know. They're just not going to wear maybe Adelaide Metcalfe shirt every day that they go to office. But I guess if there was something really bad to happen, that the photocopier exploded, maybe we could compensate them somehow, I guess you'd say. But I don't know if there's a huge need to have a big budget for that, unless we were basically stating that everybody in the office had to wear the same clothing, which I don't think we really want to go down that road too bad.
Yeah, well, the uniform, right? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, just one comment. Just considering we're updating or amending the policy, could we, Jen, either get that policy sent out to us after the meeting, or can we wait till the next meeting? Because like typically when we update or changing policies, they're on our agenda. So just in case there's anything else that council wants to update on it, because I may have been on council in 2013, but I certainly don't remember seeing the policy.
No.
Yeah, what I can do is bring it back at the next council meeting with another report for updating the policy. And if council approves these changes, I can add that in there.
Excellent. Okay. With that, so we have the two recommendations there. The first one is to receive the report. Okay, Councillor Brody and Councillor McKinnon. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. And the next one is to resolve that council approve the amendments to the personal protective equipment policy for the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe. And we'll add in there, Jen, and that the policy will be brought back to the next council meeting.
Yep.
Okay, mover and seconder. Okay, Councillor Brody and Deputy Mayor. All those in favor? And that's carried.
My last report is the accounts payable listing from January 6th to January 26th in the amount of $180,558.76.
All right, is there any questions at all on the accounts? Councillor Clark?
Yeah, let me get to it. So I guess this will probably come up in the budget on Wednesday night too. I guess I was surprised to see the AQUA, the Ontario Clean Water Agency, the alarm calls and the maintenance and whatever. I thought when we awarded them the contract that covered everything, but I'm now finding out that's not the case. And that's why the number will be higher in the budget, I'm guessing.
I can answer that, Councillor Clark. Yeah, that is why the number is higher in the budget, because if there's any alarms that go off on weekends or stat holidays or whatever, it is on top of normal maintenance practice. So that contract that you saw, the number was 36,000 on the year, plus any emergency call-ins. So, and it all depends on who shows up as well, whether they need a foreman or someone higher or lower. It's all specified, different price. So that's why the number's not that way.
Okay, we can talk further about that in the Wednesday night meeting, I guess. Thanks.
Councillor McKinnon?
Through you, Mayor Curtis, to Chief Nerdon. There's two repairs to fire engine number one for 2,600 and one for 16,000. Just wondered what was the problem.
Yeah, so the first problem was the $16,000 one. So that had to do with the emission systems of the truck. So in plain language, the exhaust filter plugged.
Oh,
and
dear.
that was a cost of almost $4,000 just for the part. And then there's a burner, it had to be cleaned. So that was $1,600. And then the labor. And then the root of the problem went back to the turbo. So they took the turbo off and there's a shaft in there, it was seized, and then there's a turbo actuator, it had to be replaced. So this was all done by Team Truck Centers. They're the dealer for Freightliner. So that was the $16,000 repair, which was not expected at all. And then there's a transmission problem. So then Team Truck says, well, that has to go to Allison. It's an Allison transmission. I thought, well, I'll try a local repair shop first. So they came out, and yeah, they found the problem, and it was a transmission control module. So both of these are very unexpected repairs. But having said that, really, this is the first significant cost in that truck in 10 years. So if you look at it over 10 years, yeah, it's expensive, but it's not all that bad. And anybody in the trucking business is running across these emission problems, and it's not cheap.
No.
But it is what it is. And now they're came out with some, which I'm going to budget for next year, is a maintenance program to hopefully prevent some of this. But it's the first one we've encountered.
Yeah. Thanks, Chief.
Is there any other questions at all? Okay, seeing none. So we need to have a motion to resolve that council receive the invoice payment approval report as presented by the clerk acting treasurer, and the council approve the account listings for January 6 to 26, 2021 in the amount of $558.76. Councilor McKinnon and Councilor Brody, all those in favor? And that's carried. And that brings us to the end of Jen's reports. Excellent. So our next staff report is from our acting township manager, Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. At the December 21st council meeting, council requested that staff bring back a potential bylaw for council's consideration with regard to regulating farm wedding special events. Through some preliminary research, a few bylaws or tools were uncovered. The three that are in the report: the nuisance bylaw, the noise bylaw, and a business licensing bylaw. These bylaws have been summarized in the report for council's discussion and consideration. Please note, as I said, this is a preliminary review of these bylaws, given council's direction on the December 21st planning meeting and the potential tools available to assist the reduction of noise. I'm just seeking council's direction on which bylaw, if any, it would like to use. Really, my recommendation at this time would be to continue the planning meeting to consider the OPA and the zoning bylaw amendments from the December 21st meeting. Work through site plan control to mitigate any negative effects from the use of the property, including noise. Work with the landowners to address the site plan conditions. And if we continue to have challenges, then we can work to address some of these noise challenges or nuisance challenges through a more broader policy framework, such as a noise or nuisance bylaw. So I guess I'll just leave it there. I'd really just like to hear from council. There are a couple tools there that we could use, but just open for council discussion at this time.
Councilor Brody.
Yeah, I have a really, really hard time thinking we need to get into business licensing. Doesn't matter if it's this scenario, an agricultural scenario, a commercial business scenario. There's so many regulations on everything already. If it's farm, you're regulated how far you can have a building from a house. You're already regulated on sizes. You're regulation after regulation. With this scenario, if they get their liquor license, they have regulations on hours. They have regulations on capacity. That's already stuff that we have. How are we going to grab a dart, throw it at a dartboard, and come up with new rules for everybody? Doesn't matter if it's this scenario, the elevator in town, the greenhouses, welding shops. It doesn't matter what this is. I am very, very against any kind of business licensing at all. So I just really wanted to throw that out there. I think every business has enough regulations on how they can operate their business as it is, and who are we to come up with more?
Okay. Councillor McKinnon?
After reading up on some business licenses, I tend to agree with Councillor Brody on us not going that route. But I also looked up various nuisance bylaws and noise bylaws. The nuisance bylaws, most of the municipalities charge $350 fine for, it says, I'll read it means something or someone harmful, offensive, annoying, or disagreeable. And that bylaw, the fine through the courts is $350. Under the noise bylaw, most of the noise bylaws that I looked at, the noise bylaw says it means unwanted sound, and they were $150 fines. So I'm in favor of looking at a nuisance or a noise bylaw, and my preference would be the nuisance bylaw.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Hendricks?
I think a nuisance or a noise bylaw would be the very maximum limit I would go. I think if you look at things like licensing event centers or different events, I mean, basically it's the reception that's the problem. A wedding can be performed in Kerwood Ballpark, and we have a fire hall, and there's an Optimist Club, and there's Amy's that has events, and they have an outdoor patio, and the new hotel coming in. I think, and there are people with family sheds where they occasionally hold like a youth group fundraiser, and are we going to license those kind of things? I think it's a nightmare. If you have an event like a stag and doe, the liquor license stipulates a whole bunch of things. Everybody else has building codes. You have the fire code, the maximum, and pretty well everything is controlled. And I think we need to be fair and not discriminatory. Are we going to license events in Kerwood Park because there are things there? We have a festival there, what's called a festival there every year when we can. And, are we? So I think we have to be really careful about getting into licensing. I think it's something that's way more elaborate than we want to get into. We don't have the personnel, I don't believe, to manage that sort of thing. So that's, I think, a noise bylaw and having a bylaw officer who can go out and say, yeah, there's 0 decibels where it is, and I'm not issuing the ticket, or this is way too loud, and and that can apply to parties. But if you have like a stag and doe that gets out of control or something. But I think when you have those type of things, then it makes a little bit of sense. I just wonder about agricultural exemptions causing all sorts of grief too.
Okay. Councillor Clark, do you have any comments at all?
I would probably just echo what Deputy Mayor Hendricks said, so I don't know that I can add anything else. Because the other thing too is, whatever we decide, it has to be consistent and it has to be applied fairly to everyone. So you can't just pick and choose who's going to have to dance to the tune. And to her point, in agriculture, we don't want to open up a can of worms there. So I don't think I tend to agree that I don't think we need business licensing. I just think we need to have proper site plan control, have the fire chief sign off, and then possibly have a noise and a nuisance bylaw. And I guess that's all I have to add.
Okay. Councillor Brody?
I just like to, I really like Marion Hendricks's view on this as well. And I just don't think we have the staff, we don't have the resources, we don't have the, to even start to enforce stuff like this. Like I think we'd go down a real slippery road if we started coming up with stuff, and it has to be fair. And I think you're going to create a whole bunch more problems than you are trying to solve one if we go down this road.
Mm-hmm. All right. If I could, just a couple comments from my seat. Looking through, the different options that we have, the nuisance bylaw and noise bylaw, I think both of those will be hard to enforce no matter what, because we're going to have either somebody on call for those to enforce that. So I'm not sure exactly how well that will be able to be enforced without really paying through the nose for somebody to be there at, say, 11 or 12 or whatever time it is, no matter where it is in the municipality. It's going to be really reactive and not at the right time to be able to enforce any of the infractions. And then I understand, the business licensing. I feel like that's going to be, it's an option, but I don't feel that is the option that we should be going with. However, when you look at, the examples that Deputy Mayor Hendricks made, which is, the Optimist Club doing something at the Kerwood Park, or one-off situations on a family farm having, either a wedding or a stag and doe or a 50th anniversary, whatever it is, those are, single events. And the thing that we have to be mindful of, and I believe probably the reason why, Simcoe County is putting forward these bylaws and the licensing, is because it's every weekend, or it could be every day. And that's the hard part when we're talking about this, is that it's not an occasional event or gathering. It could be a Friday, it could be a Saturday and a Sunday, and that does affect the lives of all the neighbors, and that's the hard part. So I'm not exactly sure. I know Morgan's mentioned, through the site plan agreement. I'm not sure exactly how well we'll be able to capture those ongoing problems. I guess I could say it's not really a problem. It's just the ongoing noise or traffic and all those things. So I just don't know how we'll be able to capture that, because the issue, I don't think, in the reason why this is coming up is not for those one-off situations. It's the continuous use. Deputy Mayor Hendricks?
Just checking. So if we have a bylaw that needs enforcing, can people call the police and have them make the call? Or does it have to be our bylaw officer? And I mean, we pay through the nose either way, but.
True. Who wants to answer that one?
It's Jennifer.
Yep, I can. Through you, Mayor Smith. So yes, OPP can be called, and as long as we have them appointed as provincial offense officer, where they can issue tickets under those bylaws, that's not a problem. They can also contact our bylaw enforcement officer. Right now, staff is going through a 4-step complaint process, so that it goes through all of staff, and the bylaw enforcement officer is a last-minute resource. Because the last thing we want to do is, council has made the comment, is to have an after-hours 24/7 hotline to somebody that, when called, would just come, and then we're going to end up paying through the nose, or the taxpayers end up paying through the nose for that. So yeah, it could be either or, OPP or bylaw enforcement.
Okay, Councillor Clark and then Councillor Brody, or did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I guess my follow-up is that when a complaint is made, I think you want somebody there. You want an in-person, unbiased person there to adjudicate the complaint and have an opinion whether it's valid or not. And if it's not valid after 2 or 3 times, then it'll take care of itself. If it is valid, then something has to be done.
Councillor Clark?
Yeah, so I agree with those comments. So the one thing I just wanted clarification. So we would have to issue a business license if we wanted to restrict the number of events. Is that correct, or did I misunderstand?
Morgan?
That will be the purpose of the business licensing bylaw, is that it gives us the ability to do those things. Yeah.
I just wanted to clarify. Okay.
Okay.
But I agree with Mary Ann's comments that, yeah, if we do have this new nuisance and noise bylaw, we need a neutral party to attend. And I was reading some literature that would suggest that maybe the OPP was needed at one attendance. So I think that would be prudent. And then if it's an ongoing problem, then you shut it down. And if it's not, then we know what the problem is.
Okay. Councillor Brody?
I'm pretty sure the OPP doesn't want to get involved in anything like this at all. They don't have the time, the resources, the whatever to worry about if we're going to have a noise bylaw. And then back to the last comment about business licensing again, I don't care what kind of business this is. I have a real hard time thinking that we're going to tell business how they can and they can't operate. Just think about that. If that was your business or that was your agricultural farm, how many more rules, regulations did everybody want put on them? I don't think anybody. So I think everybody in this council just needs to really think about that. Like, you want people telling you what you're going to do on your job, your business, your livelihood, it doesn't matter if it's this building, a ranch, an elevator, a farm, it doesn't matter. I mean, I think this is not what we want and not where we want to go.
Okay. Is there any additional comments or questions at all? None. So just going back to Councillor Clark's comment, which was the business licensing and versus the site plan. So if there was the thought of reducing the amount of events that can be happening at a location, the only way that can be done is through the business licensing bylaw, not through the site plan. Is that my understanding, Morgan?
Yes. Yeah. Mine as well.
Okay. Councillor Brody.
Through you, Mayor Smith, to Morgan. This is where I get a lot lost in a lot of these site planned. So back just to Sydenham Ridge as an example, none of this stuff is relevant in just their site plan application. Is that not correct? Do they not just need to get their site plan done? This stuff shouldn't even really be brought up before they're even their site plan is finished, correct?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Brody, typically, so we're outside of a typical process, and that's because development has already occurred on these lands, and that the land is already being used for farm wedding venue. So what we're really trying to do is just come in from behind, essentially, and clean up some of the applicable law that needs to be applied to these areas, which is the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment. And then once that's completed, then our next step is to go through site plan control. Again, we know that the development's already there, so it's hard to, it is hard to, step back and act or pretend or think through these processes with the development not being there. But because it's there, we're hearing, real complaints about noise. Again, those are hard to deal with, because if we're going through a typical process, this venue wouldn't be there and we wouldn't be experiencing this noise. So again, you go through your OPA and your ZBA. The township, through those two processes, determines if it wants a wedding venue in the township. And then through the zoning bylaw amendment, you're basically determining whether you want that venue in that location. So then after all that happens, then we go through site plan control, which spits out an agreement between the township and the landowner how to develop this property to be a farm wedding venue. And in some of those areas, we would talk about noise control, decibels, for example, where buildings are. Shannon would get involved, the fire chief would get involved, this thing would be circulated, and then it would come out with a site plan agreement. Now, in this case, we'd look at that site plan agreement versus how the property is being used already, and we do a comparison to see what we need to bring up to date, for example, to address noise, for instance. And then the landowner works towards compliance, and then we're off to the races.
Councillor Brody.
So basically, this council and prior council has allowed this venue to go through. So we know it's there, we know it's been operating. And in a package I received, there's also, I think there was roughly 26 to 30 signed neighbors that surround that whole property and support. So don't let everybody forget here that there is a main big majority of people in support for this venue and project as well. So.
Is there any other questions or comments at all? Deputy Mayor Hendricks?
Yeah, I'm being very careful because I have a conflict with one particular venue, but I think if we look at a business license, we can look at some place like Amy's. If we're going to, are we going to then tell Amy she can't have a wedding every weekend because that's too much noise? There are houses the same distance from Amy's as there are from the other place. I think if we think of it in that, if you think of what's already there and what it's being used for and what benefit would licensing do there. Amy's does have an outdoor courtyard. It, given the pandemic, it hasn't been used as much as she would like, I don't think. But I think we have to think of it, take it out of the emotional realm and put it onto something where you would think it's not an issue and ask how reasonable is it to go ahead with this licensing idea. And I don't know if you can tell people how many times they can go to work and make money.
Okay. Okay, is there any other discussion at all? Okay, seeing none. So we have just the one recommendation that council receive. I'll make sure this is the same as this one. Resolve that council receive the proposed regulating bylaw farm wedding special events staff report as presented by the acting township manager. So that's just to receive the report. Councillor Clark, seconded by Councillor Brody. All those in favor? That's carried. And then Morgan, with that, so we received it. And then do we just continue this discussion at the next planning meeting, or what's the plan?
Oh, procedurally, I'll probably kick that over to Jen to clarify what we can and can't do. But I guess from my understanding of the discussion is that we'll go through the planning meeting. We'll reconsider the OPA and the zoning bylaw amendment. It was deferred last time based on bringing back a regulatory bylaw. So we could probably, with council's direction, rescind that thing, and then we can work towards the official plan amendment and the zoning bylaw amendment. And then once that gets done, then it'll kick in site plan control. We'll see what we can do with regard to mitigating potential noise, knowing that noise is happening, but again, it's, we're trying to do this thing as if the land isn't being used the way it is. So we're trying to clean up some of these issues. And then beyond that, if we continue to have noise or nuisance related issues, we'll already be working towards some form of a bylaw because we should probably be looking at the township more broadly because we might have some other questions that we need to answer in the near future.
Okay. So are you wanting a motion today, or are we just waiting until the next meeting?
So I'll defer that question to Jen, if I may.
Yep, Jen.
Yeah, So through you, Mayor Smith, to Council and Morgan, if Council remembers at the December 21st Council meeting, the planner, Stephanie, recommended that the ZBA and OPA be approved. With these types of bylaws, they don't have a planning aspect attached to them. It's more of a control mechanism to use towards a site plan approval process. So the next planning meeting is February 16th. However, notices have not been circulated for Sydenham Ridge Estates because of this conversation tonight. However, the property owner, or I guess manager, Marge Hendricks, will be at the next council meeting. She's asked to come as a delegation because she has information, as council's aware, to present. So she'll be at that meeting. So at the March 15th planning meeting, her applications can be reviewed by council then, with a recommendation from the planner.
Okay. Councilor Brody?
Just a comment on all this, and this is why I do not like delay, because that basically was, the county basically said that it could be approved on December 21st, or that last meeting, and now we're already going to be into March 15th. Like, we really have to think about how we are holding up businesses. It doesn't matter what it is here. That's why is there any way, I mean, that just seems so long to me. It doesn't matter what it is. We've had problems with other businesses in the township for how long things take. And every time we just keep putting stuff off and delaying decisions, like the county, this is one that the county said to approve. We know by the sounds of this, I move that we decide not to do a business licensing if that takes that off the table and try to speed up process. I just have a real problem with how we keep delaying things.
So through you, Mayor Smith, to Councillor Brody, a lot of it has to do with the Planning Act and the notification period. So because this topic was coming to council tonight, we can't just send out a notice to talk about, or for council to evaluate the OPA and ZBA. Not to mention planning staff hasn't had a chance to put the bylaw in place. So we still have to go through the notification period as per the Planning Act. And all the outside agencies will be circulated again.
Councilor Brody?
So question though, so if we had have not worried about this business licensing and went with approval, it would have been approved in December 21st, correct? And now that we delayed that decision, it is now going to be March the 15th, correct? That's what I have a problem with.
But
and I'm not looking at this specific example. I'm looking at this over multiple examples across the township. Like, this affects people's business, their livelihoods, and we have to start remembering that. I mean, this is just, I just have a big trouble with these delays.
I think, Councilor Brody, specifically on this application and looking at this in the deferral, it's so then council had every option in front of them to look at what can and can't be done. And it's never a bad thing to make sure that we look at every opportunity or every path, so then council can make an informed decision onto what we like to do. And I just want to remind council and anyone viewing is that specifically the application that we're speaking about, the property owner came in front of council in 2019, and I believe it was May, saying that everything was going to be completed by the end of that year and nothing had been submitted. So we are not delaying anything in comparison to the delays that we've received from this application. So with that being said, Jen, are you wanting to have that motion indicating that council does not wish to go ahead with a business licensing bylaw? So I think Councilor Brody wanted to move that. Is there a seconder for that?
I'm going to declare a conflict.
Okay. Councilor McKinnon, you're seconding the motion to not go forward with the business licensing bylaw. Okay. Is there any discussion on this? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. All right. So that's everything for that report, I assume, Morgan. Okay, so the next one there is your employment land study staff report.
Yeah, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. Sometime in 2019, council directed staff to complete an employment land study or what's called a municipal comprehensive review of Adelaide Metcalfe's official plan. The municipal comprehensive review will examine the adequacy of lands available within the various land use designations to accommodate the anticipated demand over the 25-year planning horizon. In 2020, it was difficult to secure a consultant that was able to undertake the work required, just given the nature of planning stuff and things at the time. The analysis in the report outlines what we're looking to achieve by undertaking the review, including the implementation plan. The implementation plan is what we expect to really guide the study. We've been able to secure Finlater and Associates at a cost of about $7,980 plus applicable taxes. The project should be completed in July of 2021. And in saying that, it is recommended that council receive the report for information and that council resolves to undertake the study, contracting with Finlater and Associates to complete the employment land study.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Morgan. Is there any questions or comments on this report? Okay, seeing none. So we need to have a motion to receive the report. Okay, Councillor Clark and Councillor McKinnon, all those in favor? And that's carried. And the next one is resolved that council approve the undertaking of the employment land study contracting Finlater and Associates Inc. in the amount of $7,980 and plus HST to complete the study. Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Clark, all those in favor? And that's carried. Alrighty, so before we go into our closed session, is there anything for other business at all? Yep, Deputy Mayor Hendricks.
Just to let you know, since you paid for the conference, that I attended Roma for, it was a day and a half virtually this year. Interesting speakers. I didn't have enough broadband to go ahead and do a lot of networking and things. You know, they make the announcements of the funding that we've all gotten the press releases for. A lot of discussion on COVID. One interesting speaker talked about the community safety and well-being plans. And I'm just wondering, I see we've got our survey on our website, and I guess I'm just wondering what state we're in. The minister in charge of that had there is going to be no putting off the schedule for getting those done. I'm just wondering what stage we're at.
Okay, Morgan, I think you're the best one to speak to that one.
Yep. So this project, the Community Safety Wellbeing Plan, was promoted as a collaborative project across the county. It essentially saved 8 municipalities from doing 8 different plans and about $30,000 each. So we're currently working through the data analysis right now. I believe I have a meeting on Wednesday with the advisory committee where we're really going to get our hands into what we're seeing occur across the county, but also what's happening in Adelaide Metcalfe with regard to community safety and well-being. Once I have more of that information, happy to bring some of it back to council or share the project status. But really that's when I'll have more information as to what we're seeing through that survey that was posted on the website.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, is there anything else for other business? Okay, seeing none. So the next portion of our meeting is in closed session under section 239(2)(b) and F of the Municipal Act, and it's the disposition and future of municipal lands. So following that, we'll be back live on YouTube to have the rise and report and also to approve the bylaws. So a mover and seconder to go into closed session. Okay, Councillor Brody and Councillor Clark, all those in favor?